I sat down with Michele Pomerantz, Cleveland's Chief of Education, to discuss the science of reading. Joining me now is Michele Pomerantz, Chief of Education for the City of Cleveland, and we're talking the science of reading. Michele, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What is the science of reading? What does that mean?
The science of reading is basically a new term for teaching reading to young people. Although it's a new term, it really is an old-style way of teaching reading. I was a Cleveland school teacher, taught first grade for 23 years, and basically it's teaching reading through the use of phonics and decoding words into bigger words. And why they call it the science of reading is that in the last few years, there's been a lot more research that shows how a child gets language, how they acquire reading skills. And there was a big dilemma on whether you learn to read through reading books and kind of looking at the pictures and predicting the text, or if you learn to read through making sounds, letters, and making them work and decoding the English language. And so recently the research has shown that you learn to read the way that I taught reading, the way I learned to read, probably the way you learned to read, where you learned about H-O-T, hot, pop, and you learn to decode the text without worrying about the comprehension of what it meant. And the first 3 years of learning to read, you learn to read so that first, second, and third grade, so that the rest of your grades, you're reading to learn. And for so long, especially in the state of Ohio, there's been sort of anything goes with how to teach reading. And what Governor DeWine did last year was to sign into legislation for state law that requires every school to teach reading in one way, and that is the phonemic awareness phonics reading instruction way. And so right now with our new CEO at Cleveland Schools, they are actually teaching reading one curriculum throughout the district so that every child has that opportunity to learn to read by third grade and read on grade level.
Yeah, this is great that you mentioned phonics, because growing up, I had my phonics workbook in grade school, but it seems the word phonics disappeared from the education for a long time. It's great to bring that back, because now they're starting to realize it works.
It works, it worked, and it really helped us learn more about the whole idea around dyslexia and all the different teacher development preparation that we need to have so that we have one opportunity for every child to learn how to read by third grade. And while the Cleveland Schools has done a great job, they've increased their achievement scores, 3 stars for the first time in district history, the literacy star is still a 1-star rating. And so that's why Mayor Bibb pulled together the CEO of Cleveland Schools, all the leaders around reading education, not just in the city of Cleveland, but regionally, to come together to learn more about a Science of Reading Summit, to know what we're doing and how we could create pathways, not to get in the way of what's happening in the classroom, but to support teaching and learning in the classroom in a side-by-side approach.
I'm glad you mentioned Mayor Bibb, because he's a key component to all of the reading. This is part of his agenda. Talk about that.
So the mayor's agenda has, if you see, he took his oath of office in his local library. Reading was so important to him and was his ability to connect and to achieve on the outside world, like going to the place that he loved and felt most safe, which was his local library. After the school day, that's where he would always go. His first year in office, he created a program called Cleveland Reads, along with the Cleveland Public Library, which celebrated reading. And then the second year of his term and into his third year, we moved from reading to making sure that we're instructing on how to learn to read, so that we're doing it in a capacity that when children are using their libraries, they have the opportunity to soar and read all the great books that they want. But he wanted to double down on making sure children learned how to read and were successful at that by third grade, so that they could increase their opportunities to use the libraries like he did. And he learned how to read through phonics.
Sure. Talk about the side-by-side initiative. I know that's a big part, a component of all this. How does that all tie in, and what is the initiative itself?
The side-by-side initiative came out of planning for the Science of Reading Summit. Mayor Bibb had tasked me with coming together with a lot of leaders around the science of reading, reading experts, and also those community leaders that have been part of the reading scene for years, which includes Read Baby Read, which is run by Deborah McCam, a literacy cooperative, which is run by Robert Papanetti, Kurt Caracol, and all of the things that he had done with the P16 model, and to sit together in a room and say, we're not going to create another bureaucratic committee to talk about reading. How can we use the experts that we know using the Science of Reading curriculum, the resources that Governor DeWine and the Department of Education and Workforce are providing us to help support those teachers in the classrooms working with a new curriculum so that parents have a trusting community space that intersects wherever children and parents are so that they can get those tools and those trusted hints that say, focus on phonics. Don't worry about whether it's this reading tool or that reading tool. Stick with these programs, they're tried and true, and let your teachers and educators do the main work while you support your family with little reading tips here and there at the home or in the grocery store or in the doctor's office where children and parents interact. And so what started as a Science of Reading Summit has turned into follow-through opportunities of creating where people wanted to intersect with this work. It wasn't a mandate or a call to action. It was a who's interested in this work and how can we use the governor's legislation and create pockets of supports that are tried and tested by educators and make sure that they're in places and where children and parents intersect with reading. And so we're still in the planning stage, but we're starting to see some real execution of some collegiality around this. For instance, the Cleveland Public Library is working with the Cleveland Teachers Union to have workshops on Saturdays that teach parents about the science of reading. And what's great about it is they're also teaching the library staff how to work more with parents so that when you're going to the library, you might want to pick your favorite book, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, but you're also going to pick a decodable book that helps you read those early reader primers that say, Mom and Pop sat on the box, so that you're learning those literal literacy decodable books. And so we're seeing that partnership happen. We're also seeing a literacy cooperative work on creating some, and they're part of the Imagination Library, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. They're focused on literature and good quality books, but they're also working with those parents to make sure that if they have a kindergarten through third grader, that they have tools that have been created that help with that decodable book part too. And so it brings in teachers, parents, community members, and literacy experts in a way that understands it's side by side. One road that has the classroom instruction, we don't get in the way of that, but then the other road helps with the parent ambassadors for the Cleveland Public Schools, the charter schools, the Catholic schools, understanding that these reading tools and kits are not new, they're not tricky, they are part of what you should be doing daily with your child.
That's amazing. That's a lot too, and there's going to be a lot more coming up with TV20 on the reading, on everything on Side by Side and everything reading, because it's so great. Yeah. But if people watching at home want more information, where can they go?
They can go to illiteracycooperative.org, where there's tips and tools. You can sign your child up if they're from birth to age 4 to receive a book every month. If your child is a little bit older, they can still receive these downloadable tips that have been created to help support the curriculum in the classroom, regardless of what school their child goes to in the city of Cleveland.
All right. Michele Pomerantz, Chief of Education, it's so nice to talk to you again, as always. And stay tuned, there's more TV20 news coming up next.
Thank you.